Hey guys, how's it going? I'm back here with another video, and today I decided to bring this video which a lot of you guys have been requesting me to make kind of beginner GraphQL tutorials, maybe how to integrate GraphQL into a React app. So I decided to bring this video where I'm going to be using a public GraphQL API, which is the countries API. It just gives you like information about countries. You can search for countries, many different things. It is free and public, so I'm going to leave the link for it down below. And we're going to build a simple but like really cool looking application in React, and I'm going to show you guys all the basics of how to make a GraphQL request, a query, how to make use different hooks that comes with the Apollo client library to actually create an application that handles some sort of GraphQL request, right? So this is the actual API we're going to be using, and if you're a beginner in GraphQL, this is actually your first time trying to code something in GraphQL, don't worry, I'm gonna go through all the beginning steps on what you have to do and what GraphQL does and what a query is, that kind of stuff. So don't worry about that. And before we get into the tutorial, if you guys could leave a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed, I would massively appreciate that because it would help push my videos to more people, and we're growing very fast, so I'm really grateful for that. So if you guys could just leave a like, help the algorithm push my video to more people, I would massively appreciate it. So now let's get into the tutorial. So you can see over here we have an empty project opened in my VS Code, and I guess if I'm making this tutorial, you guys already are experienced with React. So I'm just gonna create here a React app. I'm using Yarn, but you can use npx if you want to as well. And I'm gonna say yarn create React app. And when I finish installing my React application into this folder, I'll be back to show you guys all the libraries we need to install. Okay, so as you can see, we installed our React app, and we're going to be using two different libraries for this application to work. The first one is React Router DOM, and the reason why I want to do that is because I want to have a very simple looking application, but we're not going to care that much about UI. However, I'm going to have two different pages. One page where we're able to see a list of all the countries containing information about each country, which is pretty nice, and we're going to have another page where we're going to be able to search for a specific country using the GraphQL library, and it's going to return the information about that country specifically. So to install the libraries, we'll just come over here to our terminal and say yarn add. Then let's add React Router DOM first, and then let's install the Apollo client library. To install Apollo client, you just put an @, then you write Apollo, and then /client like this. And it is the standard library when you're using React for making GraphQL calls. It is very commonly used. Many companies use it, so that's amazing because it is well maintained. And you can see we just installed our packages, which are great. This is the actual versions that I'm using, so that if you're watching this video in the future and for some reason, I don't think it won't work, but for some reason it doesn't work, this is the version I'm using. So in our React app, the first thing I like to do is I like to just delete the necessary files. So this 4 files over here, the test files and the CSS files, they're usually unnecessary, so I'm going to delete them. And then I come to the index.js, and I'm just going to delete the import for the index.css because we just deleted that file. And then I'm going to come here to our app.js. I'm going to delete everything inside of it but the app div. And by the way, throughout this video, if I'm going to do any CSS, I'm just going to copy and paste CSS. The code for this video is going to be all in the description if you want to check it out. And the CSS is going to be there because I don't want to spend time doing CSS, or else it's going to take away the focus of the video. So now that we have this set up over here, let's start implementing first our routes. So I'm going to import some stuff from React Router DOM really quick. So we're going to say from React Router DOM, and we're going to import browser router as router. So we're going to import a router, and we're just changing the name from browser router to router because router is a smaller name. Then we're going to import a route and a switch. And if you're not familiar with React Router DOM, I have a full-on tutorial on this, which I'm going to link above here. A card must be appearing right now, so if you want to check it out, it is a really awesome library. I use it in every single project. And now that we have imported everything from React Router DOM, let's implement our routes. So I'm going to actually put our routes over here. I'm going to declare a router, and inside of here we're going to declare a switch tag actually to say that we want to we only want to render a single page at a time. So we're going to have 2 pages in our app, and we only want to render each page individually depending on which route we are in. And then I want to import a route over here, and we're going to declare 2 routes. One of them is going to be the home page, so I'm just going to put an empty slash. It's going to be exact, meaning we only want to render it like this page specifically. And we're going to pass a component. We didn't create yet our different pages, our components that represent our different pages in our app. So we're going to do that in a second, but we're going to declare 2 routes. One is going to be the home page, where we list all the countries, and the other one is going to be, let's call it like search, right? It's a page where you search for a country. So we're going to call it search. And now that we have these 2 routes defined, we want to create the components really quick. So I like to create a pages folder in my app and just create the components for each page individually like this. So let's call the first one home, which is like the main page. And I'm using an extension over here, which allows me to just write RFCE and press enter, and it will generate the component for me. This extension is called the, I guess it's the ES7 snippets. I think it's this one over here. Really recommend it. It is awesome. It helps you in the development process. So we just created this component, and we're going to import it in our application. It does it automatically. If I come over here and write the name of the component, you'll see it will automatically import the component from the pages folder, and we're going to say that whenever you try to reach this route, you want to render this component. Now we want to also create another one, which is going to be the search page, and I'm going to call it search like this, search.js, and I'm going to use the same snippet to generate the code for this component, and we're going to come over here and just say search again. Now it's also auto imported, and we're gonna just write something over here just so we can differentiate and check to see if it's working. So in the search page right now, the only thing it will show is the word search, and in the home page, the only thing it will show is the word home, just so we can test to see if it's working. So let's test it. Let's actually open this up, and I'm gonna clear my terminal and run this code. To run a React app, you just run yarn start, right? So it will automatically open here in our browser, the localhost 3000, which is where our actual application is running. So while it's loading, let's just check. You see we are in the home page, so it says home, but if we go to the route slash search, it now will show search, which is the other component we have. Now this is basically it for all the React dumb stuff, which I really didn't want to spend a lot of time in it because that's not the focus of this video. And now we're actually going to start implementing all the GraphQL stuff, which is amazing. Okay, so in order to start using GraphQL in your application in React, we will need to configure some stuff, especially with Apollo client. So I'm actually going to import here at the top some stuff from the Apollo client library. So let's say at Apollo client, and let's grab the following things. We need to grab an instance of the Apollo client class. So I'm going to say Apollo client like this. Then we're going to grab something called in-memory cache, which I'll explain in a bit, and a component called Apollo provider. So let's just grab this as well. So what happens is you need to wrap every component in your application in which you're going to be making GraphQL calls with this component called Apollo provider. And I'm going to do it like this. I'm just going to wrap everything around with it, actually, so that we can make API calls from everywhere in our application. And the important thing is that the Apollo provider component, it requires that you pass a specific property, which is a client. And this client is just a very simple function that will contain configuration in regards to your application. So for example, we need to determine where we're going to store our cache, right? So that's why I actually imported in-memory cache, because if you're building a very simple application, it's most likely that you just want to store your cache in memory, as it says, and you'll also need to link up and define where your GraphQL API is. So you're going to do this exactly in this client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a variable over here called client, and I'm going to set it equal to a new instance of an Apollo client like this. And inside of here, we have to pass an object containing 2 properties. One of them, as I mentioned, is the cache. So we're just going to say we want to set it equal to new in-memory cache. And you shouldn't worry that much about this, especially if you're a beginner. So I would just leave it like this, in-memory cache. And then you need to pass in URI, which it's basically the link to your API, to where your GraphQL API exists. So in our case, we're going to be using this API over here, which is or this one over here, which is the countries API. Again, the link for it is in the description, but this is the URL that we're going to be using. So I'm just going to copy this and let's paste it over here as a link or as a string, and just leave it like this. Okay, so this is all the configuration we need to make our connection, and now we just pass this instance inside of this client property. And now this means that anywhere inside of this Apollo provider, which in this case it's both pages are existing inside of the Apollo provider, since the Apollo provider is the highest order component in this case, we'll be able to make the GraphQL calls to the API. So that's awesome. Now we basically finished everything we need to do inside of this app.js, and I'm going to close it. And we're going to focus our attention in the home.js, because this page is where we want to basically just list, whenever you come to this page, you want to list every single country in the API. Right now we're just going to leave it like this, and I'm going to explain how GraphQL queries work. So in GraphQL, it's a bit different from REST, where if you wanted, for example, in REST to make an endpoint where you just get a list of all the countries, then you might specify what you want from each country, right? So for example, in REST, you would have to create two different endpoints if you wanted, for example, one endpoint to just return the name and another endpoint to return the name, the capital, and the emoji, which is just a flag for each country. You can see this is what I'm doing right here. Each country has a name, a capital, and an emoji, which is their flag. But if you're using REST, you would have to create two endpoints if you wanted to receive different types of information. But with GraphQL, you specify what you want from the data when you make the query in the front end. So when you're in your client and I just want to grab a list of the countries, but I just want to grab, for example, just a name, I can just remove this like this, run the query again, and it will just return me the name of the country. It won't return any other piece of data, which makes the request a lot lighter, because you're not asking for more data, and you can specify exactly what you want without requiring you to create several different endpoints, which basically does the same thing, right? You're just returning a list of countries, but you're returning different pieces of data depending on what exactly you want. So this is amazing. This is one of the best benefits from GraphQL. And the structure for making a query is, as you can see, it's already over here, but the idea is in the backend, you will determine a name for a query. And in this API, since we're not working with the backend right now, I'll just let you know the name of the query to get all the countries as a list. It's called countries, like this. And you basically put open and close curly braces. You put the name of the query over here. Then you open and close curly braces again. And you just list all the properties from like this query that you want to receive. So we might want to receive the name of the country, and you can see that when I write name, it also gives you the GraphQL type. In this case, the type is a string because name is a string. We also want the capital because that's something that is important, and we also want, as I mentioned before, the emoji, which in this case it just means the flag. There's other things you can grab. I know that this API gives you a lot of information. You can get like the phone, which is, I guess it's like the phone code. Let's check it out. If I run this query, it should return everything. Yeah, I think this is the code for the country. We might want to get the code, as you can see, and it should return like the code for the country. There's other things like states, right? I guess this is a list of states. Oh, it doesn't work because you need to specify. Oh yeah, so states is for example, states. It doesn't make sense to just request for states because states is a list of cities, right, or a list of states. So if you have an object instead of an object, you can just open and close parentheses like this and specify what you want from each state. So I guess that each state will have a name, yeah, and as you can see, it does. So if I run this query again, it now gives me a list of countries and a property called states, which in some cases there are some states. You can see here for Argentina, it lists all the states in the country. And because not all countries have states, that's why some countries don't have anything in the array. But this is kind of the structure. And it's really awesome because, as you can see, we're not making any changes to the API. We're not changing the endpoint in which we're making our request. We're just changing what we are requesting in the front end. And in order to make this work in our application, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to structure, I want to structure our application very simply. I'll actually just put a class name for this. Let's call it home page or just home. And I want to, for now, let's just put an h1 tag over here. Let's say something like list of countries. And again, I'll make this look better CSS wise, but for now we don't care that much about this. And you can see that if I go to the home page, it should show this list of countries tag over here. But then over here we want to list every single country and their information. So we're only grabbing 3 pieces of information, which are the name, the capital, and the emoji, right? So what we want to do is we want to make this query and just list it over here as if it was a list, right? So how do we make this query? Well, in GraphQL, you need to, in order to make a query, there's actually a hook called the use query hook. So we're going to import this from the Apollo client library. And this hook is basically used for making requests automatically when you render the page. So imagine if you're using REST, this is the same thing as having a use effect and making a request to your API to get a piece of data, right? So this will run immediately when you enter this web page. So the way to actually do it is you come over here, you destructure the pieces of information that you want from that query. So the good thing about the use query hook is that you can grab a lot of things from the request. And I'm not going to put anything inside of this right now because I'm going to show you guys what we have to do. But let's just think about it this way. If you're using the use query hook and you're grabbing data from your API, there's 3 things you might want to have. The data, which is the actual list of countries. Then some sort of variable or Boolean that will determine if the data is still loading. So that's something that you can grab from the API, which is from the library, which is amazing. Like if you're still making the request, it will give you this state called loading, which will just say true or false if it's loading the data. If it's still making the request, you can put like a progress bar or whatever you want. But it's really interesting that you can grab this. And also if there's any errors, you can grab this 3 pieces of information and deal with them however you want. You don't need to grab all 3 of them, but I would recommend them because it's interesting to have this ability and it will improve your application, right? So what do we put inside of here? Well, inside of here you put the query that you want to make. And what I mean by this is this query over here that we make in this playground, which by the way, this is an API tester that comes with the API. This query over here, we need to specify what exactly we want in our front end. So if I want to do exactly this query, I can just copy this and paste it in our application. And to do this, I'm just going to come up here outside of our function, and I'm going to create a GraphQL query, and let's call it query list of countries, like this. And there's no specific reason why I call it like this, why I do it all in caps and I put underscores. This is just how I learned it a long time ago, and I think it's pretty much the standard in the GraphQL industry. I don't know why, but this is kind of how we define the queries or the mutations that we're going to be making. And then what you do is you need to call a variable from Apollo client called GQL to determine, it is a function to determine if exactly what you want to pass. And this is one thing that puts a lot of people off, is that to write your query you need to open and close the backticks, this kind of quotes over here, and then you write your query inside of here. Now you might see that mine doesn't it looks like a normal JavaScript. It doesn't look like a string despite me using backticks over here, and it's because I'm actually using an extension. Let me see if I can find the name. I think it's like GraphQL syntax highlighting. I'm pretty sure it is this, or is it Apollo client, something like that. It basically just that removes the yellow from your queries and makes it look a lot better. You can also get syntax highlighting, which is amazing. I recommend installing it, but basically you're just defining your query over here. And if you want to make this query, you just pass it in the use query hook, and it knows exactly what you want. We're trying to make a request to the API that we put, endpoint that we put over here, to this API, and we want to grab this pieces of information from the countries list, right? And when the request is done, we want to check for the specific thing. So what I want to do is, inside of here, I want to have a div. Let's just call it, I actually put a class name over here, and let's just call it something like list of countries, like this. And I want to first of all check to see if it's still loading. So if loading is equal to true, then we want to just render an H1 saying, or actually I'll make this an H3 just because it looks a little bit better, saying something like data is loading, and then 3 dots, just so that while the data is loading, we see that the request is actually being made. I don't expect it to take that long for our data to be returned, but it's just good to have this. Then what I want is I want to see if there's any errors. So let's add another JavaScript instance over here and just say if there's any errors, then I want to display this error like this, and say error dot message, because error is an object. It contains pieces of information from the error, so you understand what the error is, and message is just like a string saying what exactly the error was. So if we get any error in the request, it will just show the error message in our screen saying something like error querying your data, something like that, right? But most importantly, at the end, if the data has been received, then we want to come over here and say, okay, if data has been received, so if there is data from our request, then we want to do the following. We want to basically grab the data and access the countries, which is what's the name of the request over here, that we received back. So data.countries. And then it's obviously going to be a list, because you can see that our request it returns data, and the countries is a list of countries, right? So what we want to do is we want to map through this list, and for each country we want to return a div. So return a div that will contain information about that country, right? So we're just specifying all the countries, and we're obviously going to grab each country information over here and a key, so that it stops like that annoying warning that React always has. So I'm just going to say key equals to key. But then country, we want to grab some pieces of information from each country, right? So for example, I want to grab I'll put an H2 tag, and I'll say something like, wait, let me just delete these things that come with prettier. I'll just say something like, I want to grab the name of the country, so country.name, and that's how you access a property, so country.name. And then I want to access the, and I'll make this an H3 this time, or yeah, let's make it an H4 just so it's smaller. And let's access the capital, and then let's also right next to it access the emoji. So we have the flag. So now what we should see is when we open our home page, it should actually list every single country in a list, and each country should have the name, the capital, and the flag, as you can see. Actually, maybe I'll put the emoji or the flag right next to the name, because it may look better. And let's see if it looks better. Yeah, I think it looks okay. Obviously the CSS will be changed, and oh my god, this is, yeah, as expected, there's a lot of countries, so the page is huge. But we're gonna make this look a little bit better, and I'll be back in a second where I edit the CSS so you guys can see it. Again, check the code out in the description. The CSS will be there, but I'll be back in a second. Okay guys, so as you can see over here, I just pasted all the CSS. It's not much, but you can check the code in the description. It doesn't look perfect, but it's good enough. You can see we have each country being displayed like this. We have their flags right next to it, which looks really good. So this is the main page for our application, and you can see that the request works perfectly. If we want to add other things to our request, for example, if I want to access, let's say the, let me see, like the currency, right? For example, if we want to access the currency for each country, we just need to add this piece of information to the query here in our GQL query that we made in our application. So I would just have to come over here, add currency, and now somewhere in our app I can access this information. Like, let's imagine I want to add this H4 over here, which just displays the currency. I can say country.currency, and it will actually display it like this. And you'll see that now in our app we have the currency. It's loading the data. Was there any errors? Let me refresh this. No, it was just loading. But you can see we have the currency for each country. I'm going to remove this because I did the CSS without expecting a new field in our app. But I just wanted to show you guys that you can add whatever information you want by just adding the field here to our query, which is one of the benefits of GraphQL. So now let's actually start working on the search page. It's going to be pretty simple, and before we actually do that, I need to add some sort of link that is going to link between pages. So what I like doing is I'll just have here like like, I don't even care if it looks ugly. I'll just have a link tag over here that I'm gonna import from React DOM. It's auto importing, as you can see, from React DOM, and it's just gonna be a link tag that links us to the search for country page, and we can just put here a to tag which links us to the search route. So if I come over here and I click on this link, it will bring us to the search route, which looks okay, right? We actually haven't done anything in this page yet. But the only thing we really want to do is we want to be able to have a div, which I'm going to give it a class name of search. And we just want to have a single input and a button. So let's actually create a div over here that is going to represent the inputs. So I'll say class name equal to inputs. And we're going to put here two things. The input, which is taking in a placeholder and a type. So let's say the type is text. And the placeholder will be something like, I'm just going to give an example, like Brazil. And then put a 3 dots. Something like that, right? In the name of a country you want to search. And then right here, we're going to put a button, which when you click on it, it's going to make the request to our GraphQL API. And I'm going to put a name, something like search country, like this. I wrote country wrong. So let's see. And you can see they appear over here. I'm going to put the CSS at the end, but for now this is enough. So what exactly do we want? We want to be able to search for a specific country, and we need to see if this is actually a query that you're able to make in this API. In this API, you can actually do this. You see that there is a query type called countries, which lists all the countries, but there's also a query type called country without the IES at the end, which is actually a function, and you can pass arguments to this function to specify which country you want to make the request, right? So what happens with GraphQL is if you want to add arguments to your request, such as, for example, I want to search information about this specific country or this specific whatever you want, right, depending on your API, then you just put the name of the query, you put parentheses like this, and you put your argument over here. And as you can see, to search for a country, you need to just display one piece of information, which is the code for the country. And right now, like, we don't really know the code for the countries. We didn't put that as part of our request. I know that Brazil's country code is probably BR, so I'm going to put BR. And you see that when we click search, it displays the information about Brazil, right? So you need to display the code for each country to actually search for it. So one thing that we can do is, in our countries list over here, we can add this code thing as part of our request so that the user knows exactly what code they want to search. You can't just put the name of the country because this isn't how the API was designed. But you can see that if I want to search for so for like the United Arab Emirates, I can just put here country and then put the code as AE. And then when we click search, it should actually, I need to finish this string over here. It should actually display the information about the United Arab Emirates. So what I want to do is I want to make that change right now, right? I want to come back to the home page and I want to include the code really quick and really simple as one of the things so that the user can know what they're doing. So I'm just going to put it right over here. I'm going to say something like, I'm going to put a division between the capital and the code so that it's not like it's apparent that they're different things. And I'm just going to put country.code. And if we want to access the code, we need to include code as one of the things we're querying. So I'm going to say code over here, save this. And now the data is loading, it's making the request. And when the request is done, it should display the data. I'm going to refresh the page just to, yeah, you can see it actually displays the code over here. And now we're going to make the request to the other query, which is a country one, and just use the code as our argument. So in our search page over here, let's just, I just realized that we're putting the incorrect placeholder. I'll change this from Brazil to something like enter country code and put something like example BR and then 3 dots. Just so that the user understands what we're trying to make. And again, I'll edit the CSS later, but for now, what we want is we want to be able to grab the information from this input, click on this button, and make the request. So we need to grab whatever someone is writing on this input. So to do that, we're actually going to create a state over here called country search and then we need to pass a function called set country for search, like this, and this is equal to use state, and you can see it will automatically import use state from React. And then over here we're gonna set this as a string, and we want to be able to, whenever we type on this input, automatically change the state called country search to whatever is the value of the input, so whatever is inside of the input right now. So to do that, we just have to pass an onChange over here, and this onChange will include a function. And I'm gonna just open up more space for you guys to see. The function will grab an argument called event, and what the function does is every time you change something in the input, so whenever you write something on the input, any new letter you write on it, it will basically call this function and set country search to be equal to the current value. So we just say event.target.value, and this should alter the value of the state to whatever we write inside of this input. So now that we have this done and we have access to the actual input, we need to make the request, and we're gonna copy the import statement we did over here. But there's a difference. Now we're not going to use the use query hook. We're going to be using another hook that comes with Apollo client, and it's called use lazy query. And this hook is a bit different. The reason for it being different is that this hook is called not automatically. You need to trigger it in order for the request to be done, which is exactly what we need, because we want to be able to click on the button to make the request instead of making it automatically. So with the use lazy query, we actually need to do something a little bit different. So we're gonna come over here and we're gonna destructure similar to what we did before and set it equal to use lazy query. But now we need to grab some different information. We need to grab, first of all, the name of the function that will be triggered. So we just grab a name, we invent a name over here, which will be the name of the function that will be triggered, that we want to trigger to make this query work. So let's call it search country. Something like this, and then we obviously want to pass this function as part of the onClick for our button. So when we click on the button, you want to search for the country, so search country, and then we need to pass here the other information that we want to grab. One thing that I just realized is this shouldn't be curly braces. Since we're using a lazy query, it should actually be square brackets like this. But inside of here, we want to pass the information that we want to grab from the request, which we're just going to do it exactly the same as we did before. We want to grab the data, the loading information, and any errors that occur. I'm going to say error over here. So now this is kind of the structure of a lazy query. Put the name of the function that will trigger it and grab the information that you want. Now one thing is important. We need to put the query over here similar to what we did over here. We're actually just going to copy this like this, and we're going to define our query up here, and we're gonna say query search country, like we did, and we want to grab specific things about each country. Let's put more stuff, the name, the capital, the emoji, the code, or let's put the currency as well that we saw. It's something we can get. We can grab many more pieces of information if we want to, but for now let's just keep these ones over here. And one thing that is important is the fact that right now this is actually a query that requires a little bit more. What it requires is some sort of argument to the function. So what we need to do in this case is we need to write it a little bit differently. So we can just come over here to this. It won't be countries anymore. If you recall, it's actually country, and we can just change this to country. And we need to pass that this function will accept some sort of argument. The thing is, and the problem with this way is that right here we're passing the argument directly, but right here we don't want to pass the argument directly to here, because we want to make it so that the argument or the country that we're searching is the country that we wrote in the state, right? So we actually need to format this query a little bit differently, and if you're confused about this, it's totally okay, but you need to structure your query a little bit differently depending on if you are making a query with arguments or not. So if you're making a query with arguments, we're going to actually do it this way. We're going to say query, and then the name of the function that calls the query. So it's called country, like this. And then inside of here, you put the arguments that it take in. So let's take a look at this function. You can see it takes in one argument, which is the code. And code is an ID type. And if you click on the docs over here at the right, you can see that we can access each query that exists, including the country one. and you can see that the country one is this is how you write it, and the argument is a code with the type ID. So what we have to do is we have to come over here, write then the argument with a dollar sign or a money sign right next to it. So the argument is code, and the type of this argument, which is ID and an exclamation mark. Then you open and close curly braces, and you write the name of the function again. In this case, it will be country, again like this. And now you need to write code, which is the argument, and set it equal to the argument or the placeholder that you defined up here. And then finally, you describe the data that you want to receive. So we want to receive the name, we want to receive the capital, we want to receive the emoji, the code, and the currency, right? So I know it's a bit different, I know it's a bit weird, and I know that it might be looking weird if you're not using the extension that I'm using, but this is the format you want to run. If I actually copy this, and actually it wouldn't work over here because this is an API tester. This is just so that we can pass arguments to this function without actually directly putting the code over here. So now we're going to grab this query search country and put it inside of here. And now comes a very important part. To actually pass the argument and set it so that the country you're searching is equal to the state that we passed over here, we just put a comma, then we set an object and pass the property variables, and then over here we pass another object, and this will include all the variables that we want to pass. In this case, we only want to pass one single variable, which is code, and the code will be equal to the country search state. So this is the format over here. Pass an object, it has a variables property, and the only variable you're passing is a code, and its value is a country search. So now this should actually be working. Let's make it so that whenever this happens, whenever we trigger this, we want to display it in our screen. So I'm gonna come over here and create another div, and this is going to be the I'm gonna give it a class name of search country. Did we call it something else, search country? No. So let's just call it search country. And inside of here, we're going to ask, okay, if the data has been received, then for now, just so we test to see if it's working, let's display an H1 with the data information. So let's just grab the data, which is the name of the country. So data.countries, or country. Let's see if it's actually country. Yeah, it's called country. And dot name. And let's see if this works. If we come over here to our application, we refresh our page, I'm going to search for Brazil, so it should be BR. When I click search country, it should have displayed Brazil, and it did. There might be some other errors. For example, if I search BR, oh yeah, I erased everything, so it gives up some errors. But if I search BR without, like this, without actually holding the information, without being capitalized, we can click search country, and it won't work because it must be capitalized. That's how they defined it over here. Every code is capitalized. So we can add some tweaks to make this work better. For example, we can say dot to uppercase, so that no matter what you write, it will turn everything into uppercase. So now if I come over here and go to search for country and put BR as lowercase, it will actually search for Brazil because it will uppercase it and search for the correct code. Now that we know this is working, we want to structure our application so that it will display all the other information that we want. For example, let's just say something like we want to display the, let me think. Let's put a div over here, and let's wrap all of this around with a div, like this. And let's call this individual country, or country display. Yeah, country display. The names doesn't matter that much, but we're just going to use them for the CSS. And then we're going to add all the other information. We're going to add the emoji. Actually, the emoji should come over here together with the name. So this should probably be the capital. So let's say capital, and then let's say currency, and then let's say, I don't know, code, and then let's say, what else did we grab? I don't think we grabbed that much, right? Yeah, I think those were the things that we grabbed. So I'm gonna actually delete this one, and we can even add some more like this, some more like connectors. So for example, I'll put over here capital, just to declare that this is the capital. Then this will be currency, and then this will be country code, like this. And you can see that now it should be displaying the information based on what you search. If I search for AE, it will search for United Arab Emirates. Now, as you can, if you probably realized, there's some issues with the code, because if I write BR over here and I search for Brazil and I erase it, you can see that automatically it gives us an error. The reason for that is because it is fetching the request even when we don't click on the button. And there's a very easy way of fixing this. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer the logic of these variables over here to calling the variables directly in the function search country. And to do that, we need to actually change this onClick so that it actually is a function that calls the search country function like this. And now the search country function can accept variables, and we're just going to pass this variables. Instead of passing it on the hook, we're just going to pass it in the function individually. And now we can call this function how many times we want, and change the value, the arguments to them every time we call them. So we're actually going to come over here and pass and paste this variables over here. And if we search for BR, as you can see, it will search for Brazil. But now we can erase this and search for AE, and it will search for the UAE, as you can see. So now you can actually search for many countries, and this is amazing. Now I'm gonna actually do some CSS, and I'll be back in a second to show you guys the CSS done. Okay guys, so as you can see, I just added very simple CSS. Don't even know if it looks good, but this is basically it for the styling. You can see it's working perfectly. You can search for any country code and it will show the correct information. The only thing we need to do left is just put the link for like moving to from the search to the home page in the search page. So we're gonna copy this link tag that we had over here. We're gonna put it over here at the top as well, just right above the input. Oh, I forgot to import the link tab, or the link tag. I'm just gonna copy this import over here and just paste it here at the top, and you can see that now it should be working. We have this link over here. When I click on this, oh, I need to change the where it's going, right? So we want to go to the home page, and let's click here, list of countries. Let's call it like this. Now you see there's a tag. If I click on it, it brings me to this page where there's a list of countries. The API request works perfectly. If I come over here, I can put a country code. Let's put I don't even know the country codes. Let me put EG. Is there a country with this? Egypt. Yeah, that makes sense. If I put something like LS, I'm pretty sure there isn't. Oh, there is. But yeah, you can play around with this, and you can see that the request is working. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys gained value from it. I wanted to bring this very small project that a lot of you guys have been asking me to do one similar to this. I've done a video similar to this one in the past where I dealt with the weather API using GraphQL on the Apollo client. But today I decided to bring this other one because I wanted to introduce the use lazy query hook, which I didn't mention in the other video, and it's very important as well. So I hope that you guys gain value from this video, especially since I went over the basics of GraphQL, the basics of writing queries. There's still a lot more that you can learn. If you want to check it out, I have a whole series working with GraphQL where I also teach the backend and I teach how to work with mutations, which is a very important topic as well. So if you want to check that out, the link is going to be in the description. And yeah, that's basically it. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I'm posting 3 times a week and it's a lot of work, and I would massively appreciate if you guys could help out grow the channel. And yeah, that's basically it. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I see you guys next time.